Good afternoon, everybody, and you're very welcome to our webinar today, Digital Document Fraud Detection, Practical Red Flags for Compliance Teams. My name is Fiona Hanlon, and I am the Events and Communications Executive for Compliance Institute. As always, the webinar will run for approximately 1 hour, and we always encourage our attendees to submit questions using the Q&A function, and we'll address them at the end. The CPD code for today is 2026-1123. So 2026-1123. This will be sent to everybody once the session concludes, along with a PDF version of the slides, and we'll also upload the recording to compliance.ie later on today. So I'll now hand you over to our presenter for today's session, Michael Fitzgerald, Director at Fitzgerald Forensic and Integrity Services. Over to you, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fiona. So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for attending, especially through your lunch hours as well. So really appreciate it. So you're very welcome to the webinar on identifying and detecting questionable documentation in your work environment. So I know potentially you all come from different work environments, so I'm respectful of that as well. So for those who don't know me, my name is Michael Fitzgerald, as Fiona's just said. And I spent many years dealing with fraud and misconduct cases where documents were the deciding factor, whether they be altered, fabricated, or relied upon without challenge as well. Much of my work has involved reviewing cases where the warning signs were present in the paperwork, and I'll go through some of those cases a little bit later on. So the warning signs were present in the paperwork but missed in plain sight. Through my current consultancy, I now help organizations train teams to identify document fraud at an earlier stage, not just investigators, but we also look after frontline staff as well who handle documents every day, which are a key resource for many of your teams as well. This webinar really is about sharpening up that lens as well. So I would say before we start, the importance of having robust documented verification controls will support accurate decisions that you make, and they will be associated to key tasks such as opening of a bank account or processing an insurance claim. There's only a couple of examples there. The role of integrity, transparency, and consistency when handling documentation is paramount to ensure you're dealing with the clients, customers, and employees in a balanced and fair manner. And that will come out from a regulatory point of view as well. Or I should say a little bit sharper there, that would be a requirement from a regulatory point of view. So today's session, I hope, deepen your understanding of document assessment, the fraud indicators and evidence validation techniques that you can adopt if you so wish. So hopefully you'll get something, at least one thing out of today, which is always good for these kind of events. What I would say before we start is that this is usually a half-day training session, so I've crammed quite a lot in to a 1 hour session. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoy today's session. So just on my own housekeeping, I have put a disclaimer and copyright notice in here, and really that is that I know Fiona will be sharing the slides with you at the end of the session or whenever that Fiona gets around to it. So just that this is a standard document that I put in here anyway. So what do we want to get out of today? The objectives of today is really that we identify the most manipulated document types, and that's can be used internal collusive fraud and or third-party fraud as well. We recognize visual metadata, behavioral and contextual red flags in digital and physical documents. That's probably one of the most key areas for me to discuss with you today, is the behavioral and contextual side of things, because it just doesn't stand alone that you have a document. You have to look at the context and the behavior of the individuals presenting those documents as well. We'll apply we'll discuss about applying practical detection techniques that strengthen your decision making at first review and then at your escalation stage as well. We'll understand and talk about AI as well, which is obviously AI is a prevalent thing now. Won't go away either. So we'll see how documents are being presented and how AI is evolving and what you can actually do in countering AI. Strengthen your onboarding, KYC and claims controls in both on-site and remote environments. And finally, we'll look at implement proportionate verification steps that support your decision making and also stands up against the regulators from a defensibility point of view. So really, this is a practical session that shows you how you can potentially identify manipulated documents, spot patterns of deception, and strengthen internal controls to reduce exposure to the hidden fraud risks. What I'm hoping is by the end of the session, you'll have a better understanding and identify, if you don't have it already, you'll have a better understanding and identifying common red flags, applying verification techniques and embedding stronger documenting controls within your work environments. The objectives of this session, I hope, are clear. That consistent documentation are essential for defensibility, customer fairness, and regulatory compliance. So I'm repeating that, but I think it's quite an important statement to make for all of you that are attending today. What we won't cover off today is email fraud, such as business email compromises or CEO executive impersonation fraud. Whilst I fully respect that there is potentially documentation provided with those, we're just going to be extending the scope of what we need to discuss today. So we won't be discussing that or covering it off today. So before I move to the next slide, I thought it'd be important to share some information with you about a recent ACFE report relating to anti-fraud technology, and I can share that with Fiona at the end of the session as well. So what the headlines from that is that only 7% of organizations report being more than moderately prepared to detect or prevent AI-powered fraud. So only 7% of organizations state that. 75% of respondents consider AI models bias or lack of fairness an important factor for adopting the technology, yet only 18% of those respondents organizations test their AI models for bias and fairness. So a bit of a contradiction there. And the most common applications for generative AI are phishing and scam detection. So that meaning they're the most common tools that are being used, and they're being used for phishing and scam detection, risk identification, assessment, and report writing. So before looking at the most commonly manipulated documents, which we'll take a look at in the next couple of slides, we'll take a moment just to look at what document fraud is, because it's all right me saying about calling out document fraud, but I just want to give you, and you probably know this, I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but it's important to understand what document fraud is. And so document fraud is the creation, alteration, or use of false or misleading documents to deceive others. So that can involve passports, anything that's an identification, financial records, certificates, digital files, and what these are being used is to gain an unlawful benefit or hide a wrongdoing. So as I say, we'll be looking at some of the most common types of fraud in a moment, and hopefully, sorry, that's too quickly. We want to go look at them. So sources such as Europol and Interpol generally group document fraud into 4 particular categories. The first one being completely fabricated documents. The second one, altered genuine documents. So for example, I dealt with a case once where a genuine document, a passport, was provided. On the back page where you see the pictures, etc., it had overlaid the original information. So all intents and purposes, it was a genuine document, but somebody had put the fraudster's details attached to that document. So The third one would be fraudulently obtained genuine documents such as visas, permits, HR related documents. And then the final one they call out is a misuse of real documents belonging to someone else. I'll often refer to the importance of your own objectivity and what I would call confirmation bias, and not having preconceived ideas about who is providing the documentation, which will make it questionable. One thing I would say is I recently spoke to an individual who informed me that he put an extra effort, or I should say, they put an extra effort into reviewing information when it was a non-national that had submitted the claim. Given that we now live in a multicultural and international environment, you need to move away from that and have an objectivity and move away from the confirmation bias. So you're not just thinking just because somebody has presented those documents, that particular set of people are doing something wrong. That's the wrong way to look at things. So what can the documents actually be used for? So in line with what Interpol and Europol are actually telling us, they can support identity fraud, so stealing a genuine person's identity, and that's to provide a false identity to access services or products, such as bank accounts, present forged IDs, passports, residency cards, or age documents, use altered proof of address documents to build a fraudulent profile, and inflate the credibility when they're being onboarded in a bank or that similar environment, or even in a KYC process from an insurance perspective. This is an area that's talked about quite a bit now. They're also used to build synthetic identities. These documents are being used to build synthetic identities, and that's creating a fake identity by combining real and fabricated personal information. So that would be an example of that would be combination of real and fake data, so such as a real PPSN number plus a fake name. So they use falsified bank statements, pay slips, or utility bills to age a synthetic profile, enable opening of accounts, credit lines, or insurance policies under a fabricated identity. They'll also be used to commit financial fraud. So they'll manipulate bank statements to show higher balances that really are, alter pay slips to inflate salary for loan approval or insurance coverage, and falsify invoices or receipts to submit inflated or completely fabricated claims, and then produce fake company registration documents to appear legitimate. They'll also facilitate insurance fraud as well. So the documents will be used to submit manipulated quotes or repair information or invoices to support inflated claims, produce falsified medical letters, sick notes or assessments, provide a staged or duplicated documents from previous cases, and alter timelines, dates, or even and events to fit into the claim narrative or the context of the claim application. The other thing they'll do is use documents to evade compliance or regulatory checks. They'll supply forged AML KYC documents during onboarding, misrepresent beneficial ownership of the company, conceal high-risk jurisdictions by altering addresses or business details. So such as a lot of you will know that there's high-risk jurisdictions where we can't take in the business. They'll fabricate or conceal that information in order that they can get onboarding over the line. They'll also provide fake certificates, tax clearance, insurance, and qualifications as well. The last part there, the qualifications piece, really, it could be that somebody is trying to get a job with an organization, and they'll provide fake certificates to do that. And that moves me on to enabling employment and HR fraud as well. So we're not only just looking at the commercial side of things here, but we're looking at the internal side as well. So reference letters can be used or can be fraudulently created as well. Tax-related documentation, inflating income to alter job titles to meet the thresholds to get even credit or visa applications in order to get a role, and submit for fabricated, as I say, fabricated qualifications, training certificates, or professional memberships as well. For example, high profile jobs carry a big salary, but you may need to be a member. I'm a member of the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, so that could be an area that could be faked as well, or fabricated, I should say. The support organised fraud rings as well. This is what these documents are being used for. They organise a wider fraud ring that are attempting to manipulate the financial services, for example. But what they'll do then is reuse the same templates across unrelated individuals, so different banks or different insurance companies, etc., and produce batches of bank statements, utility bills, or invoices from the same source. They'd leverage AI tools to generate clean documents with consistent formattings as well. So I do have it reminds me of in my world of fraud going back quite a while. There was a case study that I wanted to just share with you, and it was when I worked in one of the banks. And the scenario was that an organized fraud typology involved the creation of fraudulent bank accounts. And how they did that, they used stolen or compromised identity documents, primarily passports, and these accounts were being used to deposit altered or stolen checks that had been intercepted in the post, mainly from businesses. So they were quite high value as well. The reconciliation of those checks would take a little bit longer with those businesses. So they were particularly aiming at business checks or checks that they could get hold of. But to open the accounts, they used stolen passports, used to pass basic identity checks at account opening, and the account established solely to lodge checks that had been intercepted, as I say. The indicators identified inconsistent identity documentation, the format, the photo quality issues, and an account showing no legitimate transactional behavior. So this was when they opened the account, the first thing that came through was these checks as well. So the actual control weakness that we saw was reliance on documents presence rather than the authenticity, limited cross-checking of claim of the identity against the payee details, and delay in reconciliation between issue checks and encashed items. As I say, the larger organization or larger businesses don't always reconcile their checks immediately. So it was a while before they said, well, this check was issued for 20 euros and now it's come out as 4,020 euros. So that's a weakness on behalf of the organizations as well. So let's just have a look at the most common manipulated documents. And again, this information has been taken not just from me, it's been taken from sources such as the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, and also other large-scale analysis providers as well. Again, this has been done through my own research that I've been able to get hold of as part of today's session as well. So if we look at pay slips, first of all, that's one of the most common things that has been provided. So why are they being altered? And that's to inflate income for loans, rental, credit, any kind of credit applications, to qualify for policies that they wouldn't previously got hold of, and support synthetic identities with work history as well. The common manipulations around pay slips are changing salary, which is an obvious thing to say if you're inflating income, deductions, employee's name, or hours worked as well. The next thing is bank statements as well. So again, why are they being altered? They're being altered to show fake balances or transactions to hide gambling debts or undisclosed income, to meet affordability thresholds or support fabricated insurance claims as well. So common manipulations, so modified balances, fake income, altered account holder details as well. The next one would be utility bills as well, and that's for proof of address, and that's to establish a residency for onboarding for KYC purposes, to support a false identity or synthetic identity as well. And again, common manipulations that we see are change of name, address, dates, or account numbers as well. The photo IDs, this is obviously to assume another person's identity, create a synthetic identity. To access services require an age or residency verification as well. So most common manipulations are photo swaps. The other swap that I said to you before, where the passport, where somebody has just put a new identity on the back of the passport itself. Also changing the dates of birth, doctoring the MRZ line, which is the line right at the bottom of your passport, and changing the names. Invoices as well are a big one, where we, from a procurement perspective, and that's again, not only a procurement perspective, but also from an insurance perspective as well, so such as insurance claims. Also to support staged or non-existent losses and create fake suppliers or contractors. Again, that's from the procurement perspective. I have seen an awful lot of that on the invoice side of things from a personal perspective. So, and we'll cover off in a moment how we can identify that as well. So the common manipulations on invoices and receipts are adjusted amounts, duplicate templates made up of the company information. Employment letters, not one I would have thought of that's being used commonly at the moment, but it stood out from the research that I did. And they're being used to secure visas, immigration advantages, or tenancy approvals. They're also being used to support benefit fraud, and validate fake employment for loan applications as well. So again, the manipulations that we see on those documents are fabricated job titles, false start dates, and fake HR signatures as well. The insurance documents, so that's the backdate cover, claim benefits or coverage that never existed, misrepresent policyholder details as well. So I don't know if there's anybody on the line from insurance companies to support that, but the common manipulations that we see are changed coverage dates, false endorsements, and edited PDF certificates as well. The next one are tax documents as well. So why are they being altered? And that's to prove income for loans or mortgages, support business-related fraud, and to encourage or to create legitimacy for a fake or shell company as well. So the common manipulations there are tax clearance letter and self-assessment frauds. Back in the day, it used to be, I think it was P60s used to be the old documents that we used to get, but everything has been done online now through Revenue Online system as well. So company registrations, again, they're documents that have been altered. And why are they being altered? They're being altered to create credibility for fake business, to submit false invoices or procurement fraud, and to misrepresent beneficial ownership of that particular company. So again, the common manipulations are edited director details, fabricated registration numbers, and fake CRO extracts as well. What this slide actually shows us is that fraud or manipulated documents affects a large volume of sectors. It's not just financial services. It goes into the area of even into the area of welfare and revenue and all those kind of areas as well, for just as an example. So how fraudsters alter these documents? So digital documents, I would say, is now one of the fastest growing enablers of internal procurement inclusive fraud. Without editing tools and AI-based generators freely available, organisations across Ireland and the UK are experiencing a sharp rise in fraudulent pay slips and all those other documents that we've just gone through as well. So fraudsters actually use a mix of basic editing tools, advanced software, and AI-driven platforms to manipulate documents. Most alterations are quick and they're even low cost as well. You can buy on the dark web quite cheaply as well, and even on your say through Copilot, Claude, Gemini, all those areas you can create documents as you wish. What is actually happening is they're being designed to survive a casual glance, not an in-depth glance, I would suggest. So there's the basic digital editing, which is low sophistication. It is changing text using PDF editors like Adobe PDF Escape or online editing sites. And what they do is copy and paste numbers, names, or logos from genuine documents, screenshot edits using mobile apps, removal of lines, dates, or amounts used to erase or clone tools, retype whole sections on top of a screenshot background. And typically they're used in cases such as inflating income, altered balances, and fake utility bills as well. I mentioned about template reuse as well. This is where you've got the larger gangs and they using the same document over and over again. So this is fraudsters where they download genuine pay slips, bank statements, or invoice templates and replace the names, dates, addresses, and amounts. And they reuse the same template across multiple unrelated individuals. Individuals being corporate individuals, to be able to get the best of what they want to do themselves. And they're particularly used by fraud rings, procurement, and used in cases of fraud, procurement fraud, claims cases. And as I say, these can be purchased on the dark web, easily at a low cost as well. Image manipulation is editing JPG or PNG files to change figures or hide information, blurring or pixelating suspicious areas intentionally, adding a new signature, stamp, seal, or logos to a document, overlaying new text into a scanned background. And again, these are being used in cases of creating of ID, medical letters, certificates, and repair invoices. Metadata manipulation is stripping metadata. So I'll explain to you in a moment what metadata is. You probably all know what metadata is, but I never want to assume. So stripping the information in metadata to hide the evidence of editing as well. They change or create or modify timestamps within the metadata, and using a software that leaves behind inconsistent producer fields. They're exporting doctored files to new formats to obscure the edit trails, and they're being used for KYC onboarding, employment verification, and digital receipts. We mentioned about synthetic document generation as well. So this is where the AI enhanced fraud comes in. So AI tools are being used to generate clean pay slips, and we'll cover what clean means in a moment. They're being used for pay slips, bank statements, company letters, a lot of documents, and AI correcting visual clues like alignment, fonts, or shadows. They're being used to correct those particular issues that you see with a document as well. AI is used for modifying photos on ID documents, face swaps, background changes, etc. And so they've been used in cases of synthetic identities building and complex fraud attempts as well. So they're also being used to alter documents for combining real and fake data as well. So using genuine employee names but fake salary details, real addresses but falsified numbers, real logos copied from a website but but fake PDF content, and also real bank formats copied but made up transactions. So, for example, I dealt with a case where an individual, it was his bank details right at the top, but underneath that, he'd actually put in an awful lot of information to make that bank statement look real jazzy and very good in as far as the balances were brilliant. But what the trigger point on that was the font was totally different to the other statements that he provided, and also at the top of the document as well. So again, that's typically used, combining real and fake data. They're typically used on loan applications, insurance claims, and even tenancy fraud as well. We'll move on to the next slide. I'm conscious of the time as well, and we've got a lot to get through. So we shouldn't be just focusing on the digital documents as well. A lot of you will deal with physical documents as well. So I've just put this slide within here just to give you an idea that it's not just digital documents, but just to give you some best practices to consider for physical documents. So paper documents that you would still get in. We can't get away from that paper side of things anyway. So what you should do to strengthen your own controls is always compare to a known genuine sample. So start creating a small internal library for genuine, let's say, pay slips, bank statements. It's very useful. Utility bills, company IDs, government IDs. Compare the layouts, fonts, margins, watermarks, etc., and use that as it's a very good control to have to understand what those documents really should look like. And you can actually compare them to digital documents as well. It's nothing to say that you need it just for the physical side of things. Excuse me. So what I was saying before, most fraudsters reuse outdated templates, so you can catch them out that way as well. So also another tip would be to look out for physical security features. I'm sure you know this, but again, watermarks are quite a key thing to documents nowadays. Embossed or raised text as well. What do those documents, or what should they actually look like as well? Holograms or unofficial IDs, heat sensitive ink as well. So and UV features as well. So keep those in mind. At the start of my fraud career, I shouldn't call it that, but at the start of my fraud career, Keysins were a company that I know we used to use an awful lot, who provided organizations with a sample of what passports should look like. And again, that they were quite useful to refer back to say, well, the passport should have a hologram in this particular place or a watermark on these particular pages. So I could go on and give you some more information, but I think in the interest of time, we'll move on a little bit further. But there is an awful lot of information. If you want to reach out to me after, I'm more than happy to give you some ideas on what you should be looking for in relation to visually looking at the red flags or identifying the red flags on physical documents. Just one last tip would be checking for something simple like staple holes, folds, all those kind of things. So a genuine multi-page statement share identical staple marks. So have a look at the consistency around that. So if for example you've been provided with a lot of statements and only one of them has got a staple mark in, I'm not saying it's fraud, but it gives you an idea that you may need to look at them a little bit further. So AI evolution, it's the elephant in the room, I would imagine. As in my opinion, my personal opinion on AI is that used correctly, such as Copilot, Claude, and Gemini. I think I'm pronouncing Claude correctly. Somebody told me it was Cloud, but I'll call it Claude. I think they're great tools. However, there is a but, as there always is. It has opened up opportunities for fraudsters. So I don't think there's any doubt about that. What has AI changed for us? it's important to understand what it's actually changed. AI has fundamentally altered how fraudulent documents are created, not just how they're detected. This is not about better fraudsters being out there. It's about the ability that fraud is now easy to commit because of AI. So traditionally, manipulated documents were poorly edited. Any fraud investigators on the line will probably agree with that. They were poorly edited, visually inconsistent, and they were easier to spot to the trained eye. Today, AI allows fraudsters to generate documents from scratch, so not just edit them and produce files with perfect alignment, spacing, fonts, and formatting. And they can mimic real institutions, employers, banks, and insurers at scale. They can also remove obvious editing artifacts from documents as well. The key shift in all of this is access. Fraudsters they no longer need specialist skills. They just need access to AI tools, some of which, as I said before, are cheap, fast, and widely available. And this is why document fraud has become more scalable, more consistent, and harder to detect through appearance alone. So one of the questions you may have today is that, do I need to become a forensic investigator to be able to detect or a forensic expert to identify AI? I would say no. The session is about first line detection and proportionate challenge, not forensic examination. And the goal is to recognize red flags early and know when and how to escalate, and not to prove fraud as well. So hopefully that helps you a bit. So why visual review alone is no longer enough? Well, the problem is that it isn't that the teams are missing anything. It's not derogatory against your teams. It's that the signals have moved. The visual review used to be highly effective because fraud left physical traces of such as misaligned text, different fonts, pixelation. AI has largely removed these clues, and modern AI-generated documents are often physically too clean and structurally consistent, free from classic red flags. And so as a result, the document could look genuine, pass a visual sense check, and still be entirely fabricated. And this is why organizations rely more and more on metadata analysis, structural checks, cross-document comparison, behavioral and contextual assessment. So this is not a failure on the staff, it's an evolution of the risk environment. What I said before there, the behavioral and contextual assessment, that's quite an important part that we'll cover off later. One thing I would also say is that's very important, is that humans still do better than systems in a lot of occasions. And this is an important part of this particular section, is despite the advances in AI, human judgment remains essential. People are still far better at assessing whether the story that's been provided to you makes sense, whether the documents being provided are reasonable for the circumstances, whether behaviors align with the genuine customers or claimants, and when to challenge, escalate, or accept documentation. So technology it can flag anomalies to you, spot patterns at scale, but what it can't do is understand fairness, appreciate nuance, make proportionate decisions, or carry accountability. So AI flag humans make defensible decisions. This is why regulators expect technology to support your teams, not replace professional judgment, and with clear documentation of how those decisions were actually reached as well. So metadata, as I said before, this is something I don't want to take for granted that you know about. So what metadata is, it reviews, it's a core part of a document itself. So what metadata does is actually, as it says on the screen there, it actually tells you who created the file, when it was created, when it was last edited, and where it was created. Sometimes even GPS location is on your photos as well, which again, I'll show you an example of that in a moment. and how it was created. So what kind of device type or software was actually used in the creation of that document. So I'll just give you an example here. So this is a document I created. And again, it was a false document I created for training purposes. You'll see on the right-hand side there that there's all the elements of what metadata should look like. And you'll find that in the properties section of the document that you've created, whether it be in Word, whether it be in a PDF document or anything like that. So what you're looking at here is this where this document was created. But you'll also notice that the author was Python. Python is an AI tool that's used to create this document, but it was last modified by me. But have a look to when you're looking at these type of documents, how was that document created as well? So that's quite an important part for you. Is that's a metadata piece as well. So look behind the documents itself, and I'll tell you why in a example in a moment of a case that I've dealt with as well. So red flags on metadata. So red flags on what we just looked at there is that the creation date was after the submission date. How you can detect that is view at the created and modified timestamps in the file properties, as I've said. Missing metadata, so anything that's been stripped out. So what EXIF tool does, EXIF tool is a powerful open source command, and what that can do is strip out the information, so you haven't got that information to say what the metadata should be telling you when it was created, etc. What I would say is there's that whilst that is an obvious red flag, it doesn't mean that fraud's taken place. So don't just take it in isolation. You just need to explore a little bit further. I'll move on from there, but again, these slides will be shared with you. So again, come back to me if you've got any further questions as well. So we had, I said to you before about red flags, behavioral, contextual. This is quite important. So the red flags focus on how people behave, how they submit documents, and how the overall story fits together, or as we have called it, out in its context. They complement the visual metadata, red flags, or showing that the fraud is often. Sorry, I'll start that again. So what I'm trying to say is that they complement the behavioral and contextual red flags, complement the visual and metadata red flags. That actually shows that it's not the document alone, as I've said, it's the behavior and the context you need to take into account. So don't just rely on the document alone being your sole piece of information to say that this is a fraud that's actually occurred. So regards to red flags and behavioral contextual side of things is delays, avoidance, or reluctance to provide original documentation that you've asked for, or an oversupply of documents or too fast submissions, stories that are inconsistent or shifting timelines. That would mean that you need to keep a good flow of discussions and interviews and meetings you've had with individuals in order to confirm those inconsistencies as well. Employee or financial details that don't make sense. So employer or financial details that don't make sense. That would be issues such as an employer doesn't exist, it can't be verified, there's no online presence or an invalid address. So again, that's a red flag for you as well. Suspicious submissions as well, patterns. So late night uploads or multiple versions have been sent into you. Defensive or evasive behavior when you're asking just routine questions. And contextual mismatches across documents such as addresses, dates, and amounts as well. So what I'm going to do is hopefully this actually works. I'm going to provide a couple of examples to you of what we have, what we would consider, or you should be saying whether you consider them to be fraudulent or not. So if I could ask you all to log in through your either Safari or Google. If you log into menti.com, just type in menti.com in your search, whether it be on your computer or your phone. And you use either the QR code. You can use the QR code as well. So what I want to ask you to do is to have a look at this document and think whether you think it's been naturally produced by a real business using real systems under real conditions. And what you should see now is when you sign into menti.com, you should see this screen here. If I ask you to sign in using the code 73805775, so that's 73805775, you should hopefully, if everything goes all right, you should have this now. Brilliant. So what I want you to do now is just to say, yes, that's a genuine document. No, it's not, or you're not sure whether it's a genuine document. So I think so 21% of you have outlined they think it's a genuine document. 52% say no, it's not a genuine document, and 28% are not sure. So that's fair enough. And if I just show you what we've got here is that so one of the biggest indicators of an AI generated document is it's over engineered. So it's perfectly aligned, evenly spaced, and visually balanced, and almost unnaturally so. So if you have a look at that document or that receipt I just showed you, what I would say is real receipts are generated by POS systems, not by designers. And POS receipts often show slight misalignment. They show irregular spacing. The font is different fonts. It's sometimes bold. There's line breaks. AI, what it doesn't do is simulate mess very well. It creates what I call a clean document. I've referred to that before, and says what a receipt should look like and not what it should look like in the real world. So if you look closely at the fonts on that document, they're consistent everywhere. The headings, the prices, totals, the footer, etc. And if you see even that the total there is it doesn't match to, now that's a big tip if that includes the tips, but if you see how much that actually comes to, the subtotal was 84.40 plus the 16 doesn't come to 168. However, that's not the issue I'm looking at here. It's what it doesn't give you is there's no transactional ID or terminal number. There's no cashier, operator reference, no store number, no internal code, no receipt sequence. And if you see, this is talking about metadata. You can look at metadata behind a picture as well. So there's no metadata of all on that document either, or that picture either. This one here, so sorry, I should say that it's a document that's been created by AI. So you wouldn't be shocked to hear. Over here is a document. I don't know if you can see that too well, but it's a document, a genuine document, one of my own receipts, and it shows again everything. It's messy. There's different font on here, so again that will give you an idea of what to be looking out for on a genuine document or receipt that's been provided to you as well. So I won't get you to do the same thing all over again. I was going to ask you to go in again and say whether you think this is a genuine document or not. So this is just an idea of what a document would look like, a genuine document would look like, and what we should do about it as well. So this was a document that was created by me, and it provides a little bit of context. So, for example, if I'm asked by my wife, for example, where I was in 2024, I can say to her, well, I was at Cheltenham Racecourse. And you can see from that quite nicely that I was there on the 26th of October. I took a picture of that on 1528. And now it even shows them a nice little map there of where I was and the location where I was as well. So what I'm showing this to you for is that it provides context and it reaffirms the context of the actual situation as well. You'll see that an extra piece there was that that particular horse that was running was at 15:30, which matches the actual betting slip there as well. So again, it's just to give you a bit of context around how to use those documents as well. Just from a regulatory alignment and defensible practice, we'll just go through these quite quickly. Fiona, how are we doing for time? Just so I'm conscious.
It's 13:52.
Okay, thanks very much. So I've got a few minutes. Thanks, Fiona.
No problem.
So we've spoken at great length about strong, justifiable decision making. Decisions are based on, if we look going from the top left across, decisions are based on evidence, not assumptions about individuals or document origin. That's very key. And then checks are risk-based, justified, and appropriately escalated as well. So clear records. So when we call it a defensible audit trail, so there's clear records showing what was reviewed, why concerns arose, how outcomes were reached. And then we move on to consumer fairness and due process. By challenging documentation doesn't mean that you're prejudging intent. So that's an important part as well. And then prudent technology, use of technology. So AI supports, it doesn't replace human judgment or accountability. That we've discussed that before. So use the tech AI support and other IT that you've got, but don't replace the human judgment as well. And the last box there is data protection and minimization. So only necessary evidence is collected, retained, and shared in line with GDPR as well. So don't be excessive in the amount of information you're requesting from an individual just to get to the end goal. Be proportionate in what you're asking for, and make sure you're not against. Sorry, make sure you're not going against. Going ahead of myself there, sorry. Make sure you're not going to head against GDPR. Strengthen internal controls. So I think there's many things that you can do here. Some of which can be you standardize, reduce. What I should say is standardization reduces manipulation risk. So what I would say is you can put in red, amber, green scoring, which help your teams prioritize when deeper checks are needed on particular documents. Make sure there's a segregation of duty to prevent individuals from controlling verification from an end-to-end process point of view. Direct from source verification. That's always always a very key control in as far as if you're asking information directly from the source, such as the employer, bank, or utility provider, that's a very strong control to put in place as well. I mentioned about the template library. That's a very good tool to have in place as well. And then clear escalation routes as well, so people know where to go to if they have suspicions around documents. And then what's happening is the documents are being reviewed in a consistent manner as well. So without overburdening you with information, document standards and verification techniques are standard operating procedures. You have a defined setup. You have these defined for you. Techniques for authenticating documents. So how do I look at these documents? What should I be doing to look at these documents? And consistency ensures reliability as well. So they're the three key areas for you. So document checklist development is standardizing a fraud prevention practice and having a checklist in place to tailor work types such as onboarding, such as insurance claims, etc. But don't make sure these are flexible and don't be seen as a tick box exercise as well. That's the key thing for you as well. So technology and documentation verification, what good actually looks like. So basic control, it goes from 1 to 3 here. You've got basic controls, scale controls, and then advanced controls. If we look at the basic controls, is that you can have it's what we're not doing today is actually looking at product selection or IT implementation. What we're looking at is giving you pointers about what you can do. So there's things called optical character recognition software that you can put in place. And what that is software that can read text from pictures or scan documents and turn it into editable, searchable text as well. So a simple way to think about it is you scan a piece of paper or take a photo of a document. The computer actually looks at that, at the shapes and the letters and the numbers and recognize them as a text, not just as an image. You can then copy, search, and edit or save that text as well. So OCR does help. Is one of the basic assistants for you. It reads invoice information, suppliers' names, bank information. It's one of the basic things that you can put in place anyway to have in place for identifying questionable documentation as well. Tech support's not replace. Again, I would stress again that the tech support you put in place doesn't replace the human judgment as well. That's an important thing as well. The last point there, advanced controls, that's completely down to your own organizations, whether you want to put IT in place. Whether you want to put IT in place to identify these potential questionable documents that would need you to look at a little bit further. So many of you probably heard of open source intelligence. It's abbreviated as OSINT. It's a legitimate method of verifying and providing compliance reminders. It's only as good as how you're using it. So it's only available. It's only when you use publicly available information, and that is where it remains remains ethically lawful for you to use it. So for example, if you're looking at a revenue website, that's an ethical and lawful way of looking at stuff to verify a document. So it strengthens evidence quality by validating the context around the document. We could spend a day training on this, to be honest with you, but we've only got a couple of moments now, and I just want to give you some time for questions as well. So basically, open source intelligence allows you to look at publicly sourced information to verify that information, and that means you're consistent with GDPR and Consumer Duty as well. So what it isn't is it's available. What it is works for you in, as I say, publicly accessible information. What it's not is for contacting individuals or organizations covertly, which I used to do back in the day, back 20 years ago, or conducting surveillance or deep background checks on individuals. So that's not what it should be. Practical examples are company verification, invoices, document context validation, identity and event corroboration, and employment and income validation. They're the practical sides of what you can use it for. You can use domain and websites, so things like website history tools, document and media context, so reverse image searches, so you can see where a picture actually originated from and see if that's the same person that appears on the passport or ID that's been provided to you, and file metadata viewers, having a look at those as well. The other side is in look, you've got public information, such as insurance claim, financial services, or procurement and corporate fraud, so tender awards, etc. Just very quickly now, I'm conscious of time, but again, you look at these at your own leisure. If you look at documents that have been provided purportedly from the UK, Ireland, etc., you will see that they should be in these particular formats. However, if they've been made up or created in the US, for example, some of these dates, for example, will be totally different to what if they'd be reversed around, and that's how the Americans do it. Their weeks start on a Sunday, ours start on a Monday. You'll also see commas in particular places. They use Fahrenheit and we use Celsius. So again, those are all and I see Fiona's back on there. So if I could just give you one key thing is that your takeaway for today is that think beyond the document itself, consider the context of the matter you're looking at, recognize the common red flags, leverage technology first, and forward-thinking approach. Move from a reactive spot the fake mindset to a proactive system-supported detection strategy. So if those 4 takeaways for you, hopefully it's given you something for today. As I say, I've crammed an awful lot into a short period of time, and I'll stall there because I'm getting very hoarse.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was excellent. I liked your comment in relation to the documents are being created for the casual glance and not the in-depth review. So thank you so much. Now we have slightly run out of time for the Q&A, but I know you do have your contact details on the final page of the presentation. So anybody who's here today and who wishes to reach out to Michael, please do so. As you can see there, his contact details there are available. But I will just address one question that was actually submitted during the registration.
Sure.
So what countries, Michael, are most red flags coming from?
So it probably goes back to my point, and I'm not avoiding the question here, Fiona, but it goes back to my point that we can't just think that most common red flags come from a particular country and say, well, if they all come from that country, then we should just focus in on that. That's your confirmation bias kicking in. And it's also you need to put context around the confirmation bias is seeking it out information that just confirms your existing beliefs. So really you need to have that open mind. And if we look at Interpol or places like that, there's no reliable information or ethical evidence that document fraud comes from a specific country or specific individual. So if I was to say to you everything comes from an African country, then your whole focus would be thrown at that African country. You need to have that open mind about it can come from anywhere, and I think we need to have that mindset ourselves that it can come from everywhere.
Of course, absolutely. Well, that's great. Look, I'll close off, Michael, and just thank you so much for your time and presenting to our members today and to everybody who has joined us. We will send these slides on shortly to everybody. So look, you have your contact details there and they can reach out to you directly. Great. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks a lot.